Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire is to fill the world with Krishna Prema. Now we're going to talk about science. What has science got to do with Krishna Prema? The answer is nothing whatsoever, if we refer to mundane science. However, Srila Prabhupada, the representative of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was very concerned that his disciples, who he was directing on the path toward Krishna, that his disciples combat misconceptions that are prevalent in the world under the banner of science. Because as long as people are attached to certain misconceptions propagated in the name of science, it is very difficult, if not impossible, for them to even begin to advance in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness is based on faith. Faith that there is a Supreme Lord, that there is life beyond death. But some of these scientific theories that are widely propagated, even though they don't directly combat theism, the very nature of the theory is that they undermine theism. For instance, we are told and expected to accept as science that this whole universe, whatever that may be, came into being with a big bang. A big bang, not a small bang. A very big bang. And then everything came out of that. Now, certain theists try to accommodate this theory within their theistic system, but most people who are called scientists who subscribe to this Big Bang theory say that there's no need for a God within it whatsoever. In other words, it is indirect but very influential atheism. Another related theory is evolutionary theory, that the life forms that we see in the world, including you and me, have evolved by natural selection from primitive species. Inherent in this theory is another theory that life is dependent upon certain combinations of chemicals. In other words, there's no such thing as a soul. When the body is finished, everything is finished. So these are very prominent theories which militate against theism, directly or indirectly. So we should be aware of what these theories are, because if we are to practice Krishna consciousness, we should be convinced of the reality of the soul and of the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Controller. But if we don't discuss these wrong ideas which we have imbibed prior to coming to Krishna consciousness and which are in the atmosphere, I mean, it's just generally everyone believes them. And if you might read something in a magazine about how, for instance, I'm just giving some theoretical statement that one certain species of whales are faced with extinction and they have certain characteristics which they formed in the course of evolution, and just this kind of statement is made. Cockroaches are a hardy species. They've survived the Ice Age and so on. So like that, Ice Age. We don't even know if there was an Ice Age, but according to... Yeah, the scientists will write about an Ice Age as if it's a fact, although, and according to them, they think it is a fact, although, I don't know. I wasn't there. At least I don't remember being there. So we ourselves are liable to be influenced by that. And if we are to preach Krishna consciousness, we have to disabuse people of these theories. And if we are to preach Krishna consciousness, which we're supposed to do, we are likely to run into people who present these theories to us either as doubts in their own mind. They may say, well, yeah, I kind of interested in Krishna Bhakti, but, oh, I said something good. All right, that was worth a garland. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in Krishna Bhakti, but it's difficult to believe because, after all, everything just came into being with a big bang and there's no real God there at all. So we may meet people like that who are somewhat pious but doubtful also. And we are also likely to meet people who straightforwardly say that actually all this Bhagavad Gita and belief in God, it's all bogus. Science has shown that there is no God, and belief in God is just due to some rogue gene that is left left in the system of some people, not in the system of Dr. Richard Dawkins. He's more evolutionary, more evolved than others. But people who have this God gene, they tend to believe in silly things like God, and so they have various explanations, which are, well, not exactly explanations, but in their mind explanations, which if we're not prepared to reply to, will make us look foolish in the eyes of people who don't know better. And also, as we are enjoined by Srila Prabhupada to distribute his books, and his books are full of statements saying things like, the modern scientists are all rascals. So such statements tend to irk modern scientists and people who have faith in modern scientists, which means a lot of people. And people may challenge us that, why is it that you say, why does your guru say that these scientists are all rascals? Okay, so to discuss some of these points, we need a rascal. We don't have any here, but we're going to have a proxy rascal. Stand in. Dr. Keshavananda Das. Haribo! Okay, Dr. Keshavananda Das is trained as a medical doctor. and has studied various branches of science. So in the absence of any genuine rascal, he's going to do his best at pretending to be one. And I'm going to do my best in trying to question his theories. Often the people who consider themselves scientifically minded, they say, well, can you prove God? Prove there's God. But they usually give a challenge. But I want to give some challenge, and it can be done in a polite way also. We don't have to outrightly say that the scientists are all rascals, but we can question their theories. And I'm actually very interested to know what they have to say, because it seems to me that their ideas many of their ideas seem to be very poor. Now, I'm speaking as a layman. I'm not trained in science. But for that matter, in one sense, every scientist is a layman, because science is so broad that you can't know every discipline. You can only know one sub-branch of any discipline in detail, because everything is, there's so much to be studied. So practically everyone who accepts scientists, who accepts what are the present standard theories accepted by orthodox scientists, they do so on faith in the proclamations of other scientists, because they can't reproduce the studies themselves, even if they knew how to do them. So, anyway, speaking as a layman to a scientist, I would like to ask you if you could kindly explain to me. Let's have a look. Now, here is a diary. It's a commonplace object. We've all seen diaries. When we see a diary, we don't think of it as being anything special. It's a very ordinary thing in the world. But if we think about it, it is very carefully designed. A lot of intelligent design, that terrible term, has gone into this to make the cover exactly as it is. You see, it's even got a metal rim just around the corner to stop the corner becoming worn out. The binding, the glue, the lines, the lines on each page, there's a number for each day exactly in order, 01, 02, 03, following the month. And then on each page there's the previous month's calendar and the next month's calendar. So, if I was, now, according to what we understand, what we are told, the whole universe that we only perceive a small part of it, but whatever we perceive, it has come into being without any particular purpose or design. It just happens to be like that. Now, if I was to say to anyone that this diary just happens to be like that, it has come into being without any person designing it, without any particular purpose. it serves a purpose, but no one intended it to have any purpose. It just happens to be like that. Would anyone believe that? I was just standing here, and there was a small dust storm, and out of that all the dust coagulated together and formed this diary with the pages, the numbers, the little, what do you call that, around the edge? Anyone know the word for that? Maybe a printer would know the term. Little protective metal on the corners. So, I'm a layman and you are a scientist. Now, considering that even one cell within our body, we understand from the scientists, you yourself say, is incredibly more complex than this. Much, billions of times more complex than this. And then all the cells combine together in a very specific way to make a human body. And then there's the whole interaction of everything in the universe, which is incredibly complex. Now, we can't imagine even a simple thing, a relatively simple thing like this, coming into being without a design, without a purpose, without an intention behind it. So, what do scientists say about that? How they say that it's all come, this whole universe has come into being, and there was nothing, then there was an explosion, and then everything settled into place, and here we are with everything as it is. Now I just can't understand how that can be explained scientifically if it seems completely impossible to us that even this diary, relatively simple, can come into being by chance forces, or forces that have arisen originally from chance. So, could you please tell me about this? Keep it simple, because I'm a layman.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my argument is that there are many things you are trying to put two things together: complexity and order with intelligent design. It's not necessary that every complex thing and order comes from an intelligent being. Why? Because there are a few examples.
Okay.
Like rainbow. Rainbow is pretty complex. We have 7 colors, and it comes of itself. But still we see there is no intelligence behind it.
Well, that's my point, is that the whole universe is going on in an ordered way.
No, that is your argument. That is, you are linking.
But that's how I perceive it.
But that's the beauty of science. That's the beauty of science, that it tries to explain various phenomena without intelligence and purpose through scientific laws. That is the very beauty of science, which you theologians are trying to dismiss.
But you say scientific laws, but how have laws come into being without any lawmaker or any purpose?
No, but this is a different question. First, let us stick to that question. Like rainbows, it's complex, it is coming of itself. Now, second example is, which is...
Well, according to our Vedic understanding, it doesn't come into being of itself. According to our Vedic understanding, we accept that everything is controlled by various devatas who control different parts. Just like you have a water minister in the state government and you have a power minister, so we accept that there is control. And you're just saying that you say it's come into being by chance, but it seems to be just from this example that it's a much better explanation to say that it is ordered.
No, but we can simulate rainbows in laboratory.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. You can simulate it if you have the intention to do so, yourself being an intelligent person with a specific desire in mind, you can simulate a rainbow.
No, but it comes of itself. When light comes, it refracts through bubbles. And that's it. And that's
well, then you could also say, for that matter, that this comes, I can also say that it comes into being by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what science wants to tell you, that it can come by itself.
That this diary can come into being by itself?
Yeah, complexity can come out of chance and chaos. That is the latest theory in science.
Really? That's the latest theory. But I just can't understand how this can come into being out of chance. Could you give some kind of scientific understanding how this diary could come into being out of chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Let's hear it.
For example,
go on.
If we go to artificial intelligence and artificial neural networks,
artificial intelligence.
Yeah, artificial intelligence.
How does that come into being?
Yeah, because artificial intelligence is
dealing... Well, artificial intelligence means that it's artificial and there is real intelligence.
No, that's the term for that.
That's a term, but that presupposes that there is intelligence, which is not artificial.
No, that intelligence is coming out of inanimate, complex physical laws. That intelligent work which is trying to simulate.
What for instance, do you mean by artificial intelligence? That you say artificial intelligence suggests that intelligence originally is not artificial. Artificial means it's what? It's made by someone. It simulates something else.
Yeah,
it simulates something else which is already there.
Yeah.
So that's simulated by an intelligent person, right? You can't have artificial intelligence without someone making an artificially intelligent...
Artificial intelligence is a term which is made to explain you, layman person.
Yeah, but I'm having difficulty with it. So.
But what happens is, in computers we have neural nets.
But the computers is made by an intelligent person, right? It's not just happening by chance.
Yeah, it's made by neural nets.
And they make it with a purpose. Right? When you say artificial intelligence, that doesn't arise simply without any purpose. People who are already intelligent, they have a desire to simulate the intelligence that we see in this world. They start off with a purpose and an objective.
Okay, fine. I'll give you an example of this to make you explain. Suppose we take a sulfuric solution, sulfur solution.
Yeah.
And we add fluorine in that.
You add, that means you, a person, are doing something.
No, that's okay. In environment, there are so many chemicals which interact. So now to explain how it happens, we have to show you. Otherwise, we can't show you. How will we be able to show you?
I see.
If originally in the universe, hydrogen, oxygen combines to form helium, now we have to show you how it is happening actually.
Otherwise, you can simulate it in a laboratory.
Yeah.
But then you have to set up a specific system. You don't just throw all the chemicals in and leave them, right? When you want to simulate what you call happened, you don't just leave the system to chance. You have to fine tune it, right?
No. This is the point.
You just throw a bunch of chemicals together.
Yeah.
But even then, you're putting the chemicals together. You are putting the chemicals together. They're not just combining by chance. No. It's you want to show how it happened at the beginning of the universe according to your theory, but you have to assemble the chemicals and put them together. They don't just by themselves come together.
No, chemicals, the interaction is by chance. You're mixing two things.
No, but
you're mixing two things here.
No, you're talking about mixing things, about mixing chemicals.
I am saying
You have to bring the chemicals together.
that's okay. That's fine.
According to you.
According to in the beginning of universe, chemicals were there.
But why? How? You're saying you want to bring them in the laboratory to show how to simulate the conditions at the beginning of the universe. But you have to bring them together. You, a person, have to... How did they get there in the beginning? Just by chance. It's always a person, right?
That's a theological question. So that's a metaphysical supposition that...
Well, I could say the same thing to you. It's a metaphysical supposition that the chemicals all just combined in the beginning by chance. You don't know. You weren't there. I wasn't there.
No, but mathematics is language of science, and through string theories, and
you can say that, but you still are trying to prove something to me by saying you have to bring the chemicals together to simulate the position. And you can say mathematics and string theory and that theory and that theory, but still, you as a person, if you want to demonstrate this, have to do something. There has to be external volition, desire, organization. So, how can you say that it just all happened without that at the beginning of the universe?
See, first question is how chemicals and all these things came into existence. That's a question. That's science. That's, you can say God, or you can say it came out of itself. That is, we are not dealing with that.
That's beyond science.
Yeah.
Why?
Every scientist.
Why?
Because we can't tell from where these initial forces or whatever came. It's there.
How do you know it's just there?
It is always existing.
How do you know?
Because energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
How do you know? How do you know? That's just your speculation, that it's just all there. You can't explain.
So that is one question. And another question is...
You can't explain. That's why I'm saying that if you take it as a hypothesis that there is a supreme controller who's put everything together in order, then everything that you study fits within that theory. Whereas, if you don't accept that, then you just have to say, we don't know and we can't know. And you can't give any reason for it. Which it seems to be more scientific to accept that. Just like it seems to be more scientific to accept that this diary came into being because a person or a group of people desired it to. And they took the necessary steps and organized it in such a way that it did come into existence. Now you could say it is a theoretically viable proposition, although I don't think it's very theoretically viable, that this did come into being by a random interaction of elements. But I would say it's... And anyone would say, even Stephen Hawking and Richard Dawkins, I think however much they waffle, they'd have to agree that it's a much better theory to say that someone actually made this with a purpose and intention than that it came into being by chance. So, it just seems to make a lot more sense that everything that we see has some intelligence and purpose and design behind it. And we actually see in science books, they talk about natural design. What does that mean, natural design?
Yeah, natural designs are natural patterns. That's design word is used, but they are patterns.
I see. They define it differently to everyone else. It's just so they are recognizing that there's design, but they don't recognize that there's any designer.
Of course. And we see examples. We see examples in nature. For example, river is there. So we see complex patterns on the river bed. Beautiful patterns. Mm-hmm. And when we see a shore and a wave comes and the sand particles are left behind, they're so beautiful patterns.
Some beautiful patterns may come. That's true. But the diary wouldn't come.
No, that is your supposition. It is patterns are becoming complexer.
But wait a minute. I mean, you may say that the rivers flow and they make some patterns, but it doesn't convince me that this diary could come into being by chance. It's just that the river flows and some random patterns come in the sand on the bank. Okay, or the clouds, they go and it looks very beautiful. But that still doesn't convince me that this diary could come into being without someone designing it. I don't see how the two phenomena are connected.
Yeah, okay, fine. I can understand your argument. Now the point is, you are trying to put this diary, equating this diary with the universe. Even now...
No, not exactly with the universe, not equating it, but just showing that it's a complex entity. It's an entity of sufficient complexity that requires human or some intelligent purpose and design behind it to bring it into being. So it would seem that in the matter of anything which is more complex... Can you give an example of something more complex than this which comes into being by apparently random forces? Well, you would say everything.
Yeah, of course.
But say something that humans can make, like a factory or a pair of glasses.
Now, one thing I just want
Can you give an example? Maybe someone walking along the beach could just find a piece of quartz which is just exactly perfect for his eyes, and then he finds another one which is exactly perfect for each eye. And maybe it's a bit too much to expect to get the glasses frame also, but at least if he could get the two pieces of quartz which are just exactly perfect for each eye, just walking on the beach, then he could take them to an optician and have them put. But the glass or plastic or whatever they use, it has to be cut and made exactly perfect, isn't it? Now, I know this is a biased group, so if we ask who's winning, you're likely to be voted out. What we really need is anyway, this is a practice session. We need a moderator here. And we need a moderator, and we need a non-partisan audience. You want to go on with this or go to the next one?
No, one argument I have for this. And I think it's a valid argument.
Mm-hmm.
Now, America has launched a program, SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Yeah.
Now, they're also trying to find intelligence somewhere in the universe.
Mm.
Now, if scientists believe that everything is coming by chance, then why would they invest millions of dollars to find an intelligence being out there?
So they don't believe that everything believes in chance.
This means there are two types of complexities, which you are mixing. One complexity is coming out of intelligence, for example, which is purposefully made. For example, if you see on a moon, if you see on Jupiter, previously people used to believe in Jupiter when they saw Galileo and all these people, there are streaks of lines. They were thinking, it's just random. But they were thinking it's something intelligently made because a straight line cannot be by chance. So now these kind of things, straight line and all these diary, these informative things, this is intelligence required. This requires intelligence. But as far as universe is concerned, where chemicals interact and where planets, big chunks of rocks, super clusters, stars, they're banging and all this kind of complexity doesn't need intelligence.
Why?
Because there is no informative pattern there. Any informative pattern that needs intelligence. If there's an information there.
Well, you study it, and you study its characteristics and how it interacts with other things. It's not just a random complexity. Just like, for instance, a living being. a fish, its body is such that it is suitable for living in the water and for catching its prey, for avoiding its predators. So
no, this argument has long been like over because you are saying that fish is so much, it is fit for water and all these things. But the point is, you have to think the reverse. Because it has these characteristics, it survived. Not that it survived because of these characteristics.
But how do these characteristics? Well, then we come to another question.
Yeah.
Okay, then all right. Then we come to another question. The scientists say that different species survive because they're better suited to do so than others. And there's natural selection, survival of the fittest, but ultimately it's all chemicals. Now, what is it in a group of chemicals that makes it want to survive in that particular form and to reproduce, to protect its offspring? If we see a diary, the diary, if we bring a hammer and smash it, the diary makes no protest. If we have a little ant and it sees the hammer coming, it will run away. So what is it in the various group of chemicals that we say are living beings? How does it that chemicals develop a desire to live and to not die, to reproduce, to protect their offspring, to remain healthy? Where does that come from?
Well, 100 years back, people used to believe in position of the molecules. But now
position of the molecules?
Yeah, for example, if you study a matter, to find from where does all this comes. So they were trying to study chemicals. But now they're not studying chemicals, they're studying the relationship between molecules. 21st century science is all based on relationship and information. So because we have two isomers, suppose we have isomers, they have same molecules, same position, but different characteristics.
What's an isomer?
Isomer is a same atomic mass, atomic number, but different properties. So if you look under a microscope, it'll look exactly the same, the position, but because their relationships are different, they have different properties emerging out of it.
You mean the different relationship with adjoining molecules?
Yeah. So that is.
So it reacts differently in different situations.
So that is the phenomenon of. So it is called as epiphenomenon. So that's various molecules when they interact, they may not have the same characteristics there, but conjointly they bring so many other characteristics which are not present in the system. Yeah, so that is how they explain how these properties are coming, which might not be there in the molecules, but interaction is bringing these molecules.
No, but why? Why is one group of chemicals called a male human being attracted to another group of chemicals called a female human being? Where does that come from? Why should that be? Why should one group of chemicals have such a strong desire to preserve itself in that form, whereas this group of chemicals has absolutely no desire whatsoever of any kind? Where does desire come from?
Well, it's simple. Positive attracts negative and North Pole attracts South Pole. And that's complete. There's no life in that.
But that's not my desire to punch a scientist in the face. Excuse me, I shouldn't have said that. Is not the same as it's a very different desire between of a magnet attracting iron filings. The magnet has no from what we can see, the magnet has nothing to gain from doing so. It's like anything else, which we call non-living. If we try to break it, it doesn't possess any mechanism or show any desire that to preserve itself in its original form.
No, it is because we have because we have something called as evolutionary programming, where
Programming means there's a programmer.
no, but we are trying to it is a random output. It is
Random programming.
Input, random
Okay,
input.
I'm going to go and get a job as I know nothing about programming, but I'm just going to go to an IT company and tell them that I'm a random programmer. And I just sit in the seat and pass stool, and if something happens on the screen randomly, then good luck.
No, but it's not a.
But if it's so random, then why all this study? Why all this study? You're talking about scientific laws, and then all of a sudden you're saying it's all random.
People are trying to study how randomness produces.
I mean, they don't know.
No,
They're trying to study means they don't know.
yeah, of course they're trying to study, and there are some positive results.
There are some positive results. So can you tell me how one group of chemicals has the desire to not only to survive, but that the other living beings or other groups of chemicals with a similar format, they also want to help those to survive. Just like a lion wants its lion's cubs to survive. The lion has an interest in another. The group of chemicals which we call a lion is very interested in another group of chemicals called lion cubs in their survival. So, where does that come from?
Well,
Why should a group of chemicals desire to survive in that particular form? You're working on it, is it?
No, well, a whole share market depends on this randomness behind it, because there's something called as random number generators. These kind of programs are there. Now, in that, suppose for example, virus. Why does virus tries to multiply itself and reproduce?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to tell you, that virus is having no life. It's a simple dead program, informative, and it is having same characteristics as a living being is showing. So we are trying to show.
Well, there's some controversy over that, I believe, among scientists. Some say that it's living, and they're not sure how to define it because it has characteristics of both.
No, computer
living
virus.
and non-living.
No.
Computer virus.
I'm talking about computer virus. No.
Computer virus, but that's also written by a person, right? It's programmed.
No, you're trying to. Let's leave about programming now.
Why?
Because
you brought up the example, not me.
No, now we are talking. Now we are talking about example from a different perspective. We are trying to show how this program reproduces itself, and from that perspective, I am giving the example.
But that's designed by a person, right?
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's my point. That whenever we see volition, it's not absolutely random. That's my point. Now another thing, if I was to punch a scientist in the face, which I won't do, or let's give a more graphic example. If I bring one hammer and smash someone's car to pieces, that would be considered a criminal act, punishable act. Now, if I bring a hammer and smash the owner of the car to pieces, if I smash the car to pieces so that it no longer works, it's a punishable act, it's a criminal act. If I smash the owner of the car to pieces so that it no longer works, it's also a criminal act, but it's considered much more reprehensible, much more severe, and much more punishable. Now, if they're both chemicals, they're both chemical machines, the car body and the human body, so why is it that smashing the human body is considered much worse than smashing the car body if basically they're both just a bunch of chemicals?
So that's what we are trying to diffuse. This is a wrong thing.
It's a wrong theory.
Yeah.
So in future, when we understand science better, we can go and just kill people and it won't matter because anyway, it's just a bunch of chemicals. There you go, folks. Dangerous theory. Euthanasia. It's already going on with abortion. Frightening theory, huh? Maybe Hitler wasn't so bad after all. Just destroyed a few bodies, and it's just a bunch of chemicals. But I think that even most scientists, they wouldn't agree with that. There is a sense of good and bad, even.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're absolutely atheistic, and we say, or if we say that everything is simply a combination of chemicals, then actually there's no real question of good or bad. It's just different chemicals, that's all. But almost everyone will accept that there is good and there is bad. And even if one is a great atheist and believes that everything is simply a combination of chemicals, still in most parts of the world and among most people, if anyone was to say that actually Hitler did nothing wrong. Now in India, of course, people don't mind Hitler so much, but in the Western world, the name Hitler is considered something very bad. And less than 10 years ago, Prince Harry of Britain was photographed at a party wearing on his jacket a reverse swastika, which was a symbol of the Nazi party, which was headed by Herr Adolf Hitler from the 1930s up until 1945. And there was a huge protest that why is this Prince Harry, who's he's the number 3, I believe, in line for the British or the Commonwealth crown, and why is he, obviously it's just some kind of, he's a young man and just in some kind of party jest or having a lark, as they say. But he was photographed and it came in the newspaper and there was widespread condemnation. Even almost 70 years after Adolf Hitler died and the Nazi party of Germany was disbanded, there was widespread condemnation because Hitler was considered very, very bad. Very, very bad person. So what is this good and bad if it's all just chemicals? There's not. If everything is all just chemicals, then there is no good and bad. If some acid reacts with an alkali and the acid and alkali no longer exist, then no one laments, oh, the acid is gone. The alkali is gone. No one laments. It's just a chemical reaction, that's all. But people do lament if there is, or they feel disturbed and they think it's not good if they have excess acid in their stomach, which causes them pain. But if it's just chemicals reacting, people don't care. But if it causes you some pain, or as is fairly common in India, unfortunately, from time to time, some nasty people, throw acid usually in the face usually of young girls, to deface them as an act of extremely nasty thing to do. So if some acid is spilled and it falls on the floor and maybe it reacts with the linoleum, you might not be too pleased, but there's nothing really to lament about. But if it goes in someone's face and makes their face look ghastly, it's a horrible thing to do. So why? Where does this good and bad come from? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, because, see, good and bad doesn't presuppose that there is life there.
There is?
There is life. Existence of good and bad doesn't presuppose. How do you presuppose by saying that there is good and bad, and so therefore there is...
Okay, I'll tell you. We suppose that there is good and bad because there is a higher order in the universe beyond simply an interaction of chemicals. That there is an ultimate good and bad, and which is why every society, every human society, including even the most primitive, has a sense of good and bad. We suppose that is there because there is an ultimate good and bad beyond chemical reactions. That's our answer.
But that is a Platonic word which you're talking about, which is like 2,000 years back. And
1,000 years back, even now if someone throws acid in someone's face, no one will think it's good. Still today, almost everyone in the world, including most atheists, have a sense of good and bad. Even scientists, they all have a sense of good and bad.
Yeah, but it doesn't presuppose that there is life there. Or there is
no, but there is a sense of good and bad. It is transcendental to the mere existence of chemicals. The sense of good and bad is transcendental. It's transcendental to simply chemicals. Simply in chemicals, there's no good or bad. It is a principle. And for that matter, pleasure and pain, they are principles which are, they transcend the mere existence of chemicals, which suggests that on a plane which is beyond the existence of chemicals or forces, physical forces as studied by scientists, there is another plane of existence or plane of reality which this is our metaphysical proposition, that there is reality beyond merely the study of physical forces. And the very existence of good and bad, yes, it does. It presupposes. It is not studyable by what you would call science. But from the orthodox scientific point of view, that means it has such a study has no ultimate worth. Because everything, if we take the so-called scientific position that everything is to be understood simply in terms of physical activity, then there is no such thing as good and bad. But we propose, and it is not, we admit, it is not measurable or understandable simply by physical study, because it is metaphysical, but that it does exist. There is good and there is bad. And you may say, well, we just accept physical interactions, but we say that beyond mere physical reactions, there is an ultimate sense of good and bad. And even the scientist who says that ultimately everything is chemicals, he also wouldn't want his baby to be kidnapped and strangled. He wouldn't just say, well, it's just a bunch of chemicals. He would feel something, because our proposition is that those feelings, they have a real existence grounded in reality, which is not measurable or describable simply in terms of physical forces. It's metaphysical. That is our point. That all of reality is not explainable simply in what you call scientific terms.
No, but that's what, then you're in dark ages.
You can call it the Dark
that's
Ages
what
if you want, but that's
Renaissance
just
tried.
name calling. That, sir, is just name calling. That's just calling something a bad name. That's all. And as a matter of fact, the term Dark Ages is also out of date now, because modern historians consider it to be too judgmental. So they don't call it the Dark Ages anymore. So, yeah, it's just name calling. To say that that's what people in the past believed and now we're more advanced, that doesn't establish anything.
No, but
I mean, what is your progressive understanding that nullifies the reality that we all live with at every moment of there being good and bad?
it is all because of memes. You have heard about memes?
Yeah, I've heard about memes. You can say that, but at the same, you can say meme as much as you like, but still if someone takes a baby and strangles it, you're still going to think it's something which is inherently bad. It's not just because of something in our culture that's been handed down generation by generation, and therefore we think there's... Actually, there may be some cultures in which they do kill babies. Or if not, well, what about modern India, for instance, or modern America? The ancient Spartans used to leave their male children out in the cold for 3 nights or something, and if they survived, they would bring up the babies, because they were a warrior race. They wanted strong children. They didn't want weak children. But nowadays we consider that wrong, to do that. Nowadays almost everyone in the world nowadays considers it wrong to kill children who have been born. Almost everyone. Already born. So, okay, it's accepted that there may be varying standards of right and what's considered right and wrong, but still there is a sense of right and wrong, good and bad. So our proposition is that this is part of reality. That even if you can't explain it in chemical or physical terms, it is an inherent part of reality. Our proposition is that the whole endeavor or the whole enterprise of wanting to explain everything in terms of physical forces is itself a dogma. The idea that we can understand the universe and its workings and explain it all according to what we can perceive with our senses and what we can deduce from our perceptions is at the outset almost certainly an extremely limiting proposition, because it's highly likely that there is much in the nature of reality which is not immediately available to our senses or understandable by our intelligence. Now we're on a metaphysical discussion, but what does our scientist say to that?
No, the point is, see, 1,000 years back or 2,000 years back, people had various superstitions and beliefs.
People had superstitions and beliefs.
It was science which helped people to come out of those superstitions. And
science helped people to come out of those superstitions. Well, people still have a lot of superstitions which, despite the spread of science, people still have a lot of superstitions. Even people who are scientifically educated, still many people who are scientifically educated, for instance, believe in God. Then we come to the God delusion and the God gene. It seems to be if you consider that that's a delusion, it's a very persistent delusion. But anyway, that doesn't really answer my point. What is your point? That 1,000 years ago people had superstitions which they don't have now.
Yeah, I mean to say people used to worship thunder. The people didn't know what was the...
So there's still people who do that.
No, but then that's what we are saying. That is the problem, is people are not preaching about science.
Well, there are many people in the Western world nowadays who worship nature, even though they've had a scientific education.
Then they might be like...
There are druids in England and nature worshippers. Well, you're just saying they're wrong, but...
Yeah, they're not scientists.
They're not scientists. They're not scientists. But why do you have to be a scientist? Why do you presume that science has a monopoly on the understanding of reality?
Because science can predict things. It can give you various technology. It's so many machines.
Science can predict things.
Yeah,
does that mean that it can explain all of reality?
No. Science cannot explain all of reality. We accept, and one of the scientists...
that's interesting. Yeah. Science cannot explain all of reality. Okay.
That's okay. And one of the scientists, he passed a statement that it's the beauty of science that we cannot explain everything. That's the beauty of science. Why?
But then I heard that some of the scientists, they're looking for a theory of everything.
Yeah, they're looking.
But you have a difference of opinion with some other scientists.
No.
All scientists say that science can explain everything.
Theory of everything excludes various other phenomena.
Then it's not a theory of everything.
Yes. So we admit that.
The theory of everything is a bluff.
No. Your understanding of theory of everything is different.
But wait a minute. We're talking about the English language here. I mean, everything means everything. But you're saying that it doesn't mean everything.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay, now we have a linguistic problem.
Yeah, of course.
When you say science is supposed to explain everything, and then you say it can't explain everything, and I say, could you please just have a look in the dictionary and see what everything means? I mean, it doesn't seem very scientific to me. If you say that, for instance, if I say, mathematically speaking, having studied mathematics for all my life and had a PhD and a Nobel Prize, I'm quite convinced that 1 + 1 = 2. But actually it doesn't. And we don't really mean that. That's what Srila Prabhupada used to call word jugglery. But anyway, if you admit that science can't explain everything, that's a good... okay, all right, we agree there.
Yeah, all.
So our proposition is that there are almost certainly innumerable phenomena that science cannot explain.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right, so we agree. But we would also like to say that it is also highly probable or acceptable that there are ways to understand certain phenomena which cannot be understood by science. And we all experience that every day. For instance, when you eat food, you have the experience that this is very nice. You don't need to be a scientist to understand that it tastes very nice. You might be able to explain that to some extent in scientific terms. How the juice of your saliva mixes with the masticated food, and then there's a reaction on the tongue which sends a stimulus to the brain which says, hey, that tastes great. So you might be able to explain that scientifically, but the experience of tasting palatable food is a trans-scientific experience. And in fact, it is arguable that every experience is trans-scientific.
No, that's what science is working on. I mean, to say why you're again and again bringing trans or metaphysical suppositions.
Well, okay, when you can explain everything into... You yourself say that everything can be explained in terms of science.
But
so we are offering an explanation for things which science can't explain, and you're protesting against that. I say that's unreasonable. We're offering a lucid explanation which does not contradict anything within science. With what's actually ascertained by science. If at all anything can be ascertained by science. That's another discussion. So it's very unreasonable to say that we don't know, but you can't know. We don't know, but we will know in future, but you also don't know and you cannot know. That's your proposition. I say it's unreasonable.
No, but you have to give me some logic and you have to give some mathematics.
Okay, you want to give some logic. Okay, this is a common thing. That science is... I've given some logic that if for a very commonplace thing like a diary, intelligence is required to put it together. So it's very logical that for the whole universe, you can't prove it, but it is a highly plausible explanation that it was put together with a purpose. The very fact that we, as intelligent beings, like to find out. We try to find out what is the purpose, and that suggests that there is an underlying purpose. Otherwise, why should we study science anyway? Why? Why don't we just eat our food and, be happy? Why all this study of science? Why the search for meaning? That suggests that there is an underlying meaning. And so this is our proposition. It is quite logical. Now, one thing that atheistic people often say, they say, well, science proves things. Can you prove the existence of God? Now, I'd like to turn that back on you and say that, well, we are told that it's a scientific fact that subatomic particles exist. Can you prove that to me? Can you show me subatomic particles? Just like people challenge, can you show me God? Can you show me subatomic particles?
Well, we can show the effect of it.
You can show the effect of it. How would you do that?
Why this bulb? That's the effect, no?
Okay. You say that this light bulb is the effect. Well, I don't really know that. You presume that subatomic particles exist, and that is demonstrated by the effect of this light bulb. I would say that the whole light that we experience in the universe, that is an effect of the supreme lighter, and that demonstrates his existence. So what's the difference between your theory and my theory?
No, Geiger counter is there. We can directly... So you know about Geiger counter? Geiger counter?
You can't actually show me subatomic particles.
We can show in our... So there was experiment...
Can you show me? So many atheists come and say, show me God, show me God. So show me a subatomic particles.
Well, subatomic... So if you take a... So
you're talking about a Geiger counter. You can show me a Geiger counter. Can you show me subatomic particles?
You can at least hear that voices of...
Well, how do I know that that's only you say it's subatomic particles? That doesn't prove anything.
Well...
There's a sound. There are so many sounds. How does some sound prove that there are subatomic particles?
But that doesn't mean that there is God. You are trying to put God...
No, I'm not... Now I'm challenging you. You can challenge me afterward. But my point is that the so-called scientific people, they challenge theists by saying, prove that there is God, show me God. So I'm just turning it back on you. You're saying that we cannot accept the existence of God because you cannot demonstrate it. So I'm asking, you believe in the existence of subatomic particles. If you're just being born from your mother, and never went to school, you'd have never dreamt that any such thing existed. You're talking about memes and saying belief in God is due to memes. But you also believe in the existence of subatomic particles because you've been taught like that. It's not that because someone has told you that that such things exist and such is the proof of that. But you haven't seen subatomic particles and you can't show them to me. So I'm saying that your belief in subatomic particles is as reasonable or unreasonable as the belief in God. You can't show it.
But we can show subatomic particles in a cyclotron. That tracks
If you show me, I wouldn't see subatomic particles. You say, you can show me, what is it, the machine you've said?
Cyclotron. Cyclotron.
Cyclotron.
Yeah, yes.
You can bring a cyclotron and do something with it, press some buttons and say that proves subatomic particles. Wouldn't prove anything to me. I don't say any subatomic particles. All of you together can say that proves subatomic particles, but it doesn't prove anything to me.
Well, if you go to laboratory, you see
If
gas
you go
chambers,
to the laboratory,
cyclotron, there are gas chambers, and
there are gas chambers.
You can see exact tracks of all the subatomic particles.
But that's your presumption. You don't know it's subatomic particles. It could be some other explanation.
Well, you can, but that's a matter of
you
names.
say it's a matter of faith.
No. No. So I'm saying it's a matter of names. You may call it subatomic particle X, Y, Z.
But it doesn't. The fact that you have a theory that there are subatomic particles that cause the traces that are seen in some machine.
Yeah.
Your theory might be wrong.
But your mind works according to those theories. According to those theories, we make formulas.
According to your theories, you make formula.
And then
So my theory about God is as good as your theory?
Why?
It's just, according to you, it's just some theory within the mind.
But then what's the practical utility of that?
What's the practical utility? Abhayam sattva sangshuti jnana yoga vyavasa. The practical utility is that one becomes spiritually advanced. You would say the practical utility of studying science is that you make atomic power stations.
Yeah.
And I say the practical utility... But actually, the practical utility, that's got nothing to do with it, with whether it exists or not. So that's a red herring anyway. But we could discuss that, but it's got nothing actually to do with whether or not it exists.
Okay,
Proof of its existence.
So I'll give you an example. This about subatomic particles.
Now, I can tell you that if you want me to believe in subatomic particles, I have to go to school with initial faith that there is such a thing, that science teaches what is correct. I have to go to school and study for many years, become qualified as an atomic physicist, and then I can interpret the observed phenomena and the mathematical formulae and agree with other scientists who say there are subatomic particles. So if I have initial faith, and I study and I follow the standard process and I follow the authorities, then I can also come to understand in the same way as other scientists have that subatomic particles, there is valid evidence for their existence. And for everyone else in this room, including probably yourself, because you probably haven't done the experiments yourself, we simply accept on the authority of the scientists that subatomic particles exist. We don't know. For us, it's blind faith. So I say that if you start off with some initial faith and you apply yourself to the process of Bhakti Yoga, according to the direction of authorities who are expert in this subject, you can, after many years of dedication, experience the existence of God. So, what's the big difference between your scientific faith and religious faith?
The difference is like hydrogen bomb.
The hydrogen bomb.
Yes, so it's atomic bomb, and it is so controlled conditions are required for that atom to come and smash and then fission and fusion. If there were no subatomic particles, how could on earth we can develop that?
I don't know. That's what you say.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So
You say that, but I don't know. You say if it were not for the existence of subatomic particles, the hydrogen bomb could not have been exploded. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Just because you're a scientist or you believe in what the scientists say, you accept that that's true. But as far as I'm concerned, I still didn't see any subatomic particles. I don't have any direct evidence of it any more than what you say and the reasoning that you give. So it's faith in what you say, and what you say is faith in what someone else says. So for most people, and for most scientists also, almost everything they believe in science is belief, because a particle physicist, he's not studied in depth evolutionary theory, so he believes that on faith. And someone who's and there are so many branches of science, so people tend to just... And another point is that different scientists who have gone to accredited institutions, received training in science, they study the same phenomena, and they come up with completely different theories, and they're arguing with each other. For instance, although it is not accepted as orthodox scientific theory, there is, even today, cosmologists or astrophysicists who contest the Big Bang theory. Now, they're all scientists. They've studied astronomy, and physics, and various phenomena. They are the experts. And they have completely different theories, which makes me think that, and similarly within, there are evolutionists who study the same microbiological phenomena as scientists, trained scientists who believe in intelligent design. So although you're talking about science and proved phenomena, we see that different scientists who have the same background in study, the same information available to them, come up with different theories. So it seems to me that what's called science is not so scientific. A lot of it rests on personal inclination and belief. What do you got to say? There's another genetic flaw according to Dawkins, or what? There's a God gene, there's a solid state gene, there's an intelligent design gene. There's a bunch of bad genes in there. But some more evolved people like Richard Dawkins have all their genes in the right order. But you wrote a book saying that genes don't exist anyway. What is a gene anyway? They say it's a structure within the DNA, and certain formation of DNA and all this. I should study it a little bit more myself if I'm going to make such a claim. Okay, on to just one more point we can discuss. Now, let's just presume for the sake of argument that human civilization will continue for another 3,000 years. It's generally believed that, I'm not talking according to the Vedic or Puranic version now, I'm talking according to the generally accepted worldview, that human civilization has existed for about 3,000 years. So for the sake of argument, let us say that it will continue to exist for 3,000 years. We don't bomb each other to pieces. We don't ignite an ecological disaster. The earth isn't hit by asteroids and thrown out, and there's not another ice age which kills everyone. Let's just presume that it goes on for another 3,000 years. Now, would you expect that the fundamental principles of science, considering that what are considered the fundamental principles of science have in the last much less than 3,000 years, in the last 500 years, undergone tremendous fundamental changes? Would you presume that after 3,000 years, what are considered the fundamental principles of science today would still be in place? You'd probably say yes, but
Well, no.
speaking as a predictive historian of science, you've got to put on another cap now and get out of the beginning of the 21st century and imagine that we're at the beginning of the 51st century.
The point is that your presumption that that fundamental things have changed, fundamental theories of science have changed.
Fundamental theories,
But it has not changed. For example, Newton's theories are still applicable. But Einstein came, he told theories on a different scale. And then quantum world came, that's working on different scale. It is not out of the thing.
Okay, let's reword it. Let's say that the understanding of science would change so radically that what we today consider science would be considered extremely primitive. If today someone tries to do science with pre-Einsteinian or pre-quantum understanding, that would be considered simply foolish, wouldn't it?
Well, Newton's our laws are still
if you
applicable.
don't, okay, all right, if we accept Newton's classical physics, but we don't, if today someone was to try to practice or explain science without taking into account Einsteinian theory or quantum theory, that would be considered, actually not really, it would not be considered proper science at all. It would be considered a very bad misrepresentation of science. Would it not?
It depends. If you're studying it depends on what you're studying. If you're studying pendulums, you don't need quantum, you don't need relativity.
Well, probably if you get into it at a deeper level, you do need also. Yeah, it depends how deeply you want to go.
No, quantum at the level of pendulums, it will go in philosophical level. It will not be.
Yeah, well, okay.
That's
all right, say that there are certain things which you can study even today without getting into the subtleties of relativity theory, quantum theory. Note the word theory. But that level of, if your vista of scientific understanding is limited to that which is not, which doesn't come under the aegis of relativity theory and quantum theory, then that would be considered a very limited understanding of science.
Yeah, after 50 years, if we have more theories to explain different levels, then
but if you're only on that level, that is not that's not a very advanced level.
So that's okay. I mean to say, more theories will enrich science rather than you're saying.
Okay, all right, more theories can enrich science. Okay, we accept that. But if more theories come which enrich science, but if any individual does not take advantage of that and simply remains within the scientific worldview without the enriched theories, then that scientific worldview would be considered to be so incomplete and primitive that it would hardly be considered properly scientific at all. Okay. So if in 3,000 years the science is so much more developed than it is now, then in 3,000 years people will look back and say, well, science at that time was extremely primitive and limited. So, isn't it?
No, it's not primitive, it is limited. Primitive you are adding.
Well, primitive means that it's coming from a previous era in... The term primitive suggests that it comes from a previous era in which people were largely ignorant. So I think the term primitive is applicable here. Yeah, okay. When I was at school, I was taught that the cells in the human body are simple organisms which we will be... Soon scientists will be able to reproduce them in the laboratory. Later, I learned that now science believes, now scientists say that actually cells are extremely complex mechanism, and it's far more complex than even a very complex modern city. Later still, I learned that even at the time when I was learning at school that cells are extremely simple mechanisms, that scientists already knew that they're actually extremely complex mechanisms, but they hadn't had time to rewrite their syllabi and re-educate their teachers. So they knew it was wrong, but they were teaching us that anyway. Now, I guess, what's that, an ethical question? That doesn't come within our discussion. But my point is that, in my biology class, if I wrote at that time that a cell is, the average cell in the human body is extremely simple, it's a simple organism, and scientists will soon be able to reproduce them in the laboratory, then I would have got full marks. Nowadays, if I wrote the same thing, I would get 0 marks. So, by the development of knowledge, what's called the development of knowledge, what was previously considered knowledge is considered invalid and incorrect. That happens. And even things that are considered correct, they are considered without the further knowledge that comes from further speculation, which is not a bad word in scientific circles. Without incorporating that knowledge, if one tries to keep one's scientific worldview within a paradigm that doesn't incorporate the newly discovered knowledge, then that science is considered primitive, incomplete, imbalanced, and because it doesn't take into account that which has been discovered, it's not proper science.
No, but even today, the Einstein relativity theory and quantum theory do not gel together.
Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah.
So, but we don't say that today's science is primitive. I mean to say we will find it how it can gel together and
okay.
Go on.
So, if in future we manage to put Einstein's relativity theories together with the common interpretations of quantum theory, then we can say that scientists previously were ignorant of that.
Yeah.
Their science wasn't very developed. We can say that for his time Newton was a genius. But if you are at the level of Newton nowadays, you're a fool. So today's genius is tomorrow's fool. What I'm saying here, what I'm getting at is that science is lauded as being, gives us so much knowledge and it's so wonderful. But if we see the history of science, when we look back at it, what is called science today will be considered primitive and ignorant tomorrow. So why should we put so much faith in science?
Well, even after 50 years, we will use Newton's laws to make machines.
After 50 years, what? Sorry?
Even after 50 years, our cars are going to work according to Newton's laws. Even after 50 years, even after 100 years. So what's
if you have any oil, yeah, that's another question. Yeah, okay, I'm not denying that. You're not adding anything to the discussion here.
No, so why you're again persisting on the point that they are primitive,
No. I'm not saying that acceptance of Newton's laws is in and of itself primitive. I'm saying acceptance of Newton's laws without taking into... If someone was to accept Newton's laws and not take into consideration further developments, that would be a very primitive outlook.
Yeah, okay, so this is how science...
So, in the same way, we can expect that there will be further developments. We can say that pre-Einsteinian and who is there? This Bohr and Heisenberg and all these people, the quantum. That chronologically or historically speaking, science prior to relativity theory and quantum theory was much less developed, or if you want to use a more pejorative term, it was primitive, comparatively speaking. So as science develops, we can say that it's almost inevitable that today's science will in future be considered primitive.
Okay. If that is...
So why give it so much, why put so much stock on it? If it's almost certain in future to be considered primitive and largely incomplete. Nowadays, if someone wants to have a well-rounded scientific outlook, he has to be aware of relativity theories and quantum theory. You just don't have a scientific outlook if you don't have that. Or even within evolutionary theory, if someone has an evolutionary theory at the level that Darwin had it, that would be considered ridiculous. So we can say that although science, it appears to give us knowledge, but almost certainly the knowledge that it's giving to us it's destined to be considered highly incomplete and for that matter faulty. Newton's theories, although they served the purpose at the time and to some extent serve the purpose at the present time, they are faulty inasmuch as they do not explain all phenomena as they were expected to, as it was thought that they did explain all phenomena. It was later discovered that under certain conditions, these rules don't work. These supposed laws don't work. Hare Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Simple. Simple for the simple. Okay, we should get some real hardcore scientists. You should, more than me, because you've studied science a lot more than me. My study of science is infinitesimal. And actually everyone's study of science is infinitesimal, but some, just like you can say, 10 to the power of minus 999,999 is greater than 10 to the power of minus 1 million. But from our perspective, it's not a very big difference. So, okay, you better lead the kirtan, and otherwise, people might throw tomatoes at you when you walk out the door. Scientists, kick him in the face with boots. Here among ourselves, it's relatively easy to discuss these things and think that we won. And actually Krishna does always win. But out there in the real world outside our temples, it might not be so easy. Don't expect that we would have an easy time to discuss this. And even that wasn't very easy. I mean, I don't know, I think Keshavanand, doctor, might have defeated some of you. What do you think? He'd have left you wondering what's going on. It's time to put away the Bhagavad Gita and get out the science primer. You might have thought. Then he'd have to preach to you again about Krishna consciousness. So we should be prepared. Those who are going to preach should be prepared for this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.